Welcome to Ambition's Apex, your guide to mastering the art of physique transformation and achieving peak performance across all arenas of life. Our mission is not just to sculpt bodies, but to change lives, empowering you towards excellence. Dive in with us as we explore insights and strategies designed to elevate you towards your journey of self-improvement. Enjoy the ascent. Welcome back to another episode. Today I have a pretty special guest here, Austin Stout. Now, for those who don't know, Austin, a few years back, mentored me for, I want to say about a year and a half. I participated in pretty much every class he could offer and absorbed as much as I could from him when we worked together. And additionally, he also coached me for a period of time when I was considering getting back into bodybuilding, but kind of decided to not go that route again. But I must say that Austin has probably been the most influential as far as education goes for me as a coach. You know, there's a lot of different education avenues that we can take as coaches. And I always say that's the mentors or educational platforms that can give you really eye-opening kind of paradigm shifts are going to be really valuable to you. And somebody that you really jive with is going to be really valuable to you as well. And Austin was that for me. So, you know, I'm not saying all that to blow smoke up your ass, but Austin, thank you for coming on today, man.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate the kind words. I think that you really summed up what I try to do pretty high level there. I mean, it's difficult to, so I think people hear education and they think just X's and O's and things. It's like, man, there's a lot of personal development and stuff that goes into a good education or mentorship program. So I think there's just so many more deeper layers to it and learning how to think more critically and solve problems and stuff. So, you know, I think that's important.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the education that you provide is very well-rounded, and I think that you bring like a psychological perspective as well that's really helpful for coaches in terms of understanding their clients better. I do want to get back to that, but I did want to start this conversation by asking, you know, earlier on, who were some of the mentors or educators or anybody in the space that was like really influential for you?
Yeah, so I can think of one or two people. I had a lot of my own quote unquote functional health issues early on, which were all my own fault. So, you know, as those types of things generally are, right? You know, just prepping too often, doing too much, you know, all that stuff. And I've told these stories before, I won't go too far into that, but I was fortunate enough to link up with probably one of my biggest influences was Dr. Eric Serrano early on. And, you know, I still go to Eric. I've been a patient and a friend for, I don't know, what are we, 2026, like 14 years now. So I thought I knew things when I started going to him, and he basically said, you don't. So, you know, and we don't always agree on everything, because I see, of course, what I do is a little different than what he's doing on a daily basis. So there's some things that are different, but he was definitely an influential person for me early on and kind of introduced me to some of these deeper systematic ideas, like how the GI plays into overall health, how, you know, the adrenal glands, hormone metabolism, like going deeper than just your basic serum blood work. He's pretty incredible to watch. Look at a CBC and he can really break things down, clear down to the cellular level. He can like walk up to a whiteboard and write down how the Krebs cycle works and how like everything's connected, you know. So he's a very intelligent person. He was a huge influence, and I think from a bodybuilding perspective too, I would say John Meadows was one as well, because him and I connected pretty early. I think the other thing, I would say one of the things that I really resonated with John was the integrity, right? We live in a weird, and it's gotten a lot crazier since John's been around, but you know, the level of like sensationalism and just all the things that go on, and there's so much information and marketing and all this stuff. And he kind of showed me that you can continue to be ethical and grounded and sensible and still appeal to people, right? And I think that's something that all of us struggle with at times. I think we probably look online and see what certain people do and get some level of FOMO and think, man, should I be doing that? Am I missing something? Should I be presenting myself differently? And the, you know, best advice he gave me was like, don't, just be yourself, man. Like, you're going to attract the right people by putting out the right message. And I kind of came up with this theory, and I didn't invent this by any means, but It's like when you're stuck in those situations, if you know what you stand for and what your values are, you can make any decision. You can just revert back to, does this align with my values? And if the answer is no, then don't do it, right? Whether it be like a business deal or coaching a client that maybe got some questionable things, or making like a decision within a client's programming, or or you get stuck in, how these things are. Sometimes you just get put in these situations where it's business, man. Like, you want to continue to make your income and get people results, but you get put in some tough spots sometimes.
Yeah,
So those were
100%.
two, for sure. Those were two people.
Yeah, John, I think that, timeline wise, we kind of have an interesting overlap because can you remind me when you got your start, or roughly when you got your start as an online coach?
I think I had my first someone paid me for like their first online diet was probably maybe like the end of 2009.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you had like over a decade on me before I really like entered into the online space, but I was like really paying attention to individuals like John Meadows and some of the earlier names and educators in this space as well. So there was a bit of an overlap there, but he was such a like bright star and like in kind of the darkness. And it sounds like he had a lot of influence on you, and integrity is huge. And I think that that's something we all struggle with, like you mentioned, where we get a little bit of FOMO. We see what everybody else is doing, and we want to kind of like, I think that it's a part of human nature to want to fit in to some extent as well. And we are in a weird position with our industry right now where, we're dealing with things like AI. We're dealing with a lot of like people just talking about wanting to scale their coaching business. Made a post about this yesterday. I know that you interact with that and probably agreed with a lot of what I had to say, but we're in an interesting period, and I think that a lot of people are leaning into things that may not align with their morality or ethics when it comes to like maybe being a little bit deceptive or trying to, it's difficult because there's so many people trying to assert themselves as like an authoritative kind of position when maybe they're not there yet, or maybe sometimes we may like the distance may be a little bit close to like where, we want to position
For
ourselves
sure.
in a certain way, but I think that the gap is like widening in terms of what people actually know and what they're like putting out there on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yes. For
all
sure.
that to say, like, one thing about you that I've always noticed is that you do stay like where you need to be. And the thing is, like, me as a coach, like, and how I see you as an educator is I've always held you in super high regard, like as an authority. And I don't think you're going to be offended when I say this, but you've never had like the fanciest marketing or like done anything like super shiny, like bright shiny object kind of, or needing to do any of that to attract the right people. And you have a lot of great people in your corner as well, and you just haven't really had to do anything super crazy. I think that there's proof in the pudding to that, right? So I hope that if anybody can take any message from today's podcast, if anybody's listening, and it's to stay true to yourself, because I think that everybody's kind of selling out to an extent at this point, right? And I think that, I don't know about you, but the culture I kind of come from, like a lot of more like kind of punk rock kind of attitude, and like I know that you and I both listen to like death metal and stuff too. A lot of that kind of culture, like they preach like not selling out, right? And it's like against that and maintaining a level of creative integrity, right?
True.
So just staying
It's
true to
true.
that is awesome.
Yeah, man. Yes, and I'll die on that hill. Not afraid to stand up there, So it's I will say that I've changed some things more recently, especially in the last couple of years, and doing some things that I would say I'm kind of have been afraid to do, especially when it comes to like a certain level of presentation and professionalism and stuff like that. So it doesn't go against anything ethically necessarily. It's just more of like a visual, right? Because I think that it matters a little bit more now than it used to. Before, it was very few people putting out content. It was a lot of just long form content. The content is what mattered. It didn't really matter what it looked like, right? It was people like logging stuff in forums and just really basic things on social media. And of course, that's been elevated to there's more of a presentation element to it, right? Now, the message itself has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
Same. And it can be difficult, and it's not difficult to do. It's actually just more a little bit frustrating sometimes when, of course, when other people that aren't doing that get credit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I'm fully transparent. Like, I don't follow people that I don't like. I don't pay attention to any of it. You know, people send me stuff. I get a lot of people that send me stuff like, "What do you think of this?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I don't even follow it." My algorithm is a little bit bodybuilding, a little bit functional health, and then mostly my hobbies, my secondary stuff. Because I don't want to see it, man. Like, I don't care. I don't want it to influence anything that I'm doing, right? Don't pay any attention. My block list is crazy long. I don't give a shit. I just don't even want to pay attention to it. But I have been a little more inclined to speak about it, at least more like passive aggressively in the recent years, and talk about some of these things because I feel like I'm in enough of an authority position now where people, I feel like, will listen, you know. And it's not even promoting me. I'm not like, it's more of like, just watch out for this stuff, you know. Or here's things I'm seeing in the industry. Having been around a long time, I've seen so many people fall off, and I've seen so many dives, and there's so many people that were exactly like we're talking about that are literally not here anymore.
Mm.
Maybe it won't be the fastest trajectory, but you're not going to deal with as much, as much BS as the other people either.
Yeah, 100%. Something to be said about like longevity and, the barrier. We talk about this all the time, but the barrier to entry to what we do is relatively low, right? Like you don't necessarily need thorough education to get into the space. All you really need is an iPhone to some extent, and then maybe ChatGPT or something. But the cream rises to the top, right? And the good coaches. A lot of people think that the coaching industry is extremely saturated now, and it may appear that way, but good coaching is not saturated. But it's just a matter of like sifting through the bullshit and getting to the right people, right? And I think we all kind of make mistakes throughout our journeys as well as coaches. So I know myself, I've learned a lot of lessons, and I think that I've matured a ton since we first met and when I first started my career. I've had ups and downs, but the point that I've gotten to now, I think I've reached a level of maturity that, I'm going to be able to really sustain what I'm doing here at this point. And like you said, there's people that like with the barrier to entry so low, people will get into the industry really quick and then like maybe have a really fast rise and then a crash because their foundations just aren't there and they're not able to support the scaling that they're doing, or their level of service and their actual like knowledge and intellect aren't there to support it either, right? They're really putting like the carriage in front of the horse, I would say. And how do you think right now, because 2026, I feel like things are moving in a strange direction really quickly, like where there's so many people just talk, like everybody and their mother is like all of a sudden a peptide educator, and all of a sudden everybody's like putting themselves in like an educator position. What do you think, how do you think things are going to play out over this year and like the coming years, 2027, that kind of stuff, in terms of people getting into the space and like exiting really quickly?
So I was laughing the other day because I've looked at people that actually were coaches, and then they were business coaches, and now they're peptide educators. And I'm like, you guys, like, I don't know if other people notice those things as much as I notice them, but there's always ebbs and flows, and it comes in waves. And it's like, there's groups of people that, if they're brand new to the space, or I should say they're newer to the space within the last few years, they've never seen any of that stuff. They're likely to just kind of like latch on to that. And the other people that have been around a long time that are jumping from thing to thing, these newer people don't know that because they haven't been here long enough. So they don't know that person's probably full of shit, right? I do.
Mhm.
I've been here. I'm watching them go from like trend to trend. And here's what I'll tell people. This is an easy rule of thumb. If you look at someone's content, if they do that, if they're jumping from like trendy thing to trendy thing, or if the more than 50% of their content is about said trendy thing, it's all you need to know. That's what they're doing. They're marketing and I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about. Maybe they do, but that remains to be seen. It's just a matter of like, it's a marketing thing. If you look at, yes, I've probably made like 1 or 2 mentions or posts about anything peptide related. And it's not because I don't like them. It's not because I don't know what they do. It's not because I don't use them.
Mhm.
It's just because that doesn't negate all of the other important stuff that we should be talking about, right? And then on the other hand, there's a group of people who are like, oh, you people are stupid for talking about peptides and GLP-1s and stuff. Like, it's not like that either. It doesn't need, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to box these things into like, we should never talk about that shit. No one needs it. Tools. They're tools. It's context. Everything is context. Everything is tools. Everything that's ever existed, probably not all of it, but many things have utility somewhere. Maybe it's very, very small, but it's not to say that like certain things are useless or good or bad. The other thing is practicality sense. A lot of these peptide stacks that people are putting out are going to cost people like $1,500 a month, and most clients can't even afford it. So can we talk about what's actually practical to implement with people? I did one peptide post about my 3 that I use the most. And of course, like 15 people, which of course the post got a ton of traction because it had the word peptides in it, right? And or whatever. But of course, a bunch of people are like, well, what about this one? What about this one? I said, did you read the post? Did you see that I said these are the 3 that I use the most? These other ones are fine. They're good. I just don't use them as much, and that's not what I'm talking about. Right? It's crazy, man. But there'll be something else. There's always, I would be shocked if we don't transition to something else, because there's just only so much we can talk about with peptides.
That's what I'm saying.
I can't
wait for it to die.
It's like we can't spend 3 years where 80% of the fitness content is peptides. Like, it's just not going to sustain. What are you going to talk about before the algorithm either doesn't reward it or people just stop paying attention to it and stop like getting this hit of arousal from it because they've seen it 50 times already? We'll have to move on to something else. And guess what? I'm still going to be here talking about everything because that's what matters. I don't know. I try not to psych myself out too much because I'm with you. I see things come in, I think, oh shit, I'm not talking about this. It's probably going to lose my following, but it always goes away.
Yeah, that's exactly where my head's at. I'm like, I can't wait for this to like phase out. So like, just, it's so much noise everywhere. The way that I think about it is I feel bad for the consumer because I want people to be working with great coaches, whether it's me or somebody else, whether it's you, whether whoever it is, right? I want people's lives to be changed. I want them to feel better. I want them to look their best. I want them to win, reach their goals as far as like whatever it is, getting into stage lean condition, whatever it is, right? That's what I want. So when there's so much noise everywhere and everybody's so like, it's so confusing for people. Like, what do I actually do? People are hearing, I have to use this or I have to use that, or this is good and this is bad. I always say that there is no good or bad. There's only context and perspective, right? So people are just confused, man. Like, they don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know, like, they're being told that this is bad and this is good, and they're completely clouded, and they're having a hard time sifting through all the bullshit to find the person that can just like put the whole thing together for them in a holistic manner, right? And like you said, talk about everything rather than just hammering away at this like peptide bullshit, right?
Yeah, and that's actually, you mentioned that, but that's actually the reason that I've started to speak out against things more, is because before I never really cared. I kind of was just under the, you know what, people do whatever they want. I don't really care. I'm going to do what I'm doing. But it started to affect me, my business, not my business as in the clients I'm getting or how many or anything. It was what the clients, the mental state that they were in when I got them. It's worse now than it's ever been. Meaning people are coming in with so much more baggage and preconceived bias and just mental turmoil in a sense, because before I would get brand new people, a lot of, new, they've never worked with a functional health coach. They've never had a prep coach. They've never, whatever. But now people have so many bad experiences, or maybe they don't have bad experiences. They're just really, really confused and apprehensive, and they lack trust. And so we have this huge trust barrier that we have to break through right at the beginning. And then you also have to consider how much information they're consuming, even when they're working with you. And it's like every 2 seconds, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And it's like, they're just getting inundated. The clients that get the best results have the least amount of preconceived bias, and they consume the least amount of information every single time. Because I'm going to tell you what you need personally. A lot of my clients are coaches. So
Mhm.
which is worse a lot of the time because coaches know enough to be dangerous
Mhm.
to themselves in a
Yeah.
lot of cases. Coaching someone but being unbiased towards yourself are two totally different things,
Mhm.
right? Which is why a lot of coaches have coaches, and that's totally fine. I don't see any problem with that. But man, I've had to change my intake process and the conversations I'm having with people, give like 2 minutes of the problem in the labs because I can read those in my sleep, and then 45 minutes of trying to talk them off the ledge. And it's like, how did we get here?
Mhm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're in an age of just information overload, and it's just like literally just being shoveled into people's minds all day long through social media, whatever it is. We can't get off our screens. I'm like you though, like I'm very mindful about my inputs, especially when it comes to social media. Muting like accounts. Anytime I see something I don't like, it's muted. Just focusing on more like my hobbies and stuff at this point. Like we've been in this industry long enough where it's like I don't need to know everything that's going on with bodybuilding. I don't need to know every single trend that's going on. And what I think is pretty ironic too about the peptides is like peptides have been around for a long fucking time, man. Like I don't
Yep.
think people realize it's not something that just came out a couple years ago. Like
Yep.
this
That was
stuff
my
has been around a
second
long time.
post.
Yeah.
I posted two peptide posts, and someone's gonna be like, "You posted three." Maybe I did, but two posts. One was about the three that I liked the most, and the other one was about the fact that we were using peptides 10, 15 years ago. Now, granted, there's more of them now, but that's literally it.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, things are in a weird position, but I think that, like I said, cream rises to the top. I don't think that good coaching is saturated. I think that, like my post said yesterday, I think once people get past the marketing and like the intake and like actually see the services that somebody provides, like it's just not there. And I think that a lot of people have shifted so much focus onto marketing and, creating a shiny object to attract people to that they're just their back end stuff is just not there and their actual knowledge and skill sets are just not there. And I'm always trying to improve and always trying to get better, and I'm not perfect myself either, but the I've strived so hard to learn as much as I can at all times and talk to the right people. That's why I had you in my corner as well. So now let's shift gears a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned, or I mentioned the psychological side of things too, and you mentioned that people are in more psychological turmoil than ever, and a lot of that's coming from information overload. I don't think that that's just from fitness stuff either. I think that the whole
Yeah.
world is just like in kind of an interesting position where we're just being fed so much information, so much bad news, all this kind of stuff. We're trying to filter through like what the right information is, not just when it comes to our own fitness and wellness and well-being, but just everywhere, right? So what are some of the, I mean, like specific challenges that you're facing with people? Like, because we talk about information overload, we talk about like when they come in, but what are some of like the very specific things that you're having to overcome with individuals, and what are some of the things that you're doing to overcome those challenges?
So the first thing that I'm doing, and probably the most important thing, is talking about it more on the front end with the client. Maybe adding some different questions to a questionnaire that you provide at the beginning if you're noticing like patterns or trends. Even I added a few questions, simple stuff like, do you find yourself hyperfixating on information? Is this a problem for you? Wow, that's a revealing question on a questionnaire. And it seems very simple, but man, that's such a revealing question. Or have you had any previous negative coaching experiences? If so, explain. I don't need names. I don't care about who it was. That's not really the point. It's more so to understand patterns. For me, so I don't want to do the same things that other people are doing if they're not being received well, but also it can also tell you a lot about the client, because if they say, well, my last 5 coaches in the last year have been terrible, I'm thinking, oh, I don't know. Statistically, I have a hard time with that. I'm not saying everyone's good, but I'm also not saying everyone's bad. Right? So just little things like that. And then when I'm responding to new clients, and I think this is really hard for people because they want to close the client. Like they want them to sign up. They want to get everyone started. I just tell everyone, man, I'm like, hey, these are the obstacles I think that we're going to see. Here's some like psychological barriers, physical barriers. I tell them right from the beginning. And I thought, man, everyone's going to run away. if I do this. And I'm doing it in a very kind way. I'm doing it in a I want to see you succeed type of way. But actually, it was kind of the opposite, where they're like, wow, you just nailed it, or you really brought light to something. And I found those have been some of the best clients. And so instead of having XYZ issue and kind of ignoring it for this first 6 months of the client's time with you, because the longer that you ignore it, the harder it's going to be to address later. These tendencies, the stuff that they're doing every week. And if you wait, it gets really difficult to bring that up at some point and change those patterns and habits. So just doing more on the front end has probably been the biggest difference, right? And it's been helpful. As far as problems go, I think that it's going to be pretty similar to what I had mentioned before, is that people just have more experiences now coming in. And I don't think that's everyone, but definitely the clients that I'm getting, because even a lot of the competitors that I have, they usually start with me because they have some kind of like issue of sorts. So they're like, hey, I want to fix XYZ so I can compete and improve and stuff. And I do get competitors that are just competitors as well, but a lot of them have some kind of problem, and they've done functional coaching, they've had naturopaths, they've gone to the regular Western medicine, or they've just gone down the crazy Google and AI rabbit hole themselves for months on end. And so they've had their experiences, and they kind of have this idea of like, this worked or this didn't work. And that creates a lot of hesitations around doing things. So instead of me being able to go in and just kind of implement all these changes at the beginning, a lot of these people I have to kind of strip back to baseline and kind of smooth everything out and get all these variables out of play, because what they've done is they've just kind of like taken things from all the coaches they've worked with and all the different resources they've read, and just kind of like keep throwing more and more stuff in there, because a lot of it's just like symptom related. For this symptom, we're going to do this, this, and this. And I don't care how good of a coach you are, eventually you're still not going to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Even me, thousands of cases, there's still people, I'm like, you're doing so much, you have no idea what's doing what at that point. So it might be a case of, as rudimentary as it sounds, is just pulling everything back. And that's where I kind of got more into talking about, especially on social media, talking about systems. Like, what are the systems that we're trying to support? The body is very good at healing itself. It's very smart. It knows how to manage all these things. So what are the systems that we need to start supporting that will kind of have trickle down into everything else? The brain, the mind is going to be one for everybody, but then maybe the next one is the nervous system, or maybe it's the gut, or maybe it's like some combination of that. So instead of going right in and thinking, oh, we need this kill phase like right out of the gate because I see some bacterial overgrowth, I think like, okay, like how is the client going to react to this? What's this going to do to their psyche? Have they done it 5 times already and had no success? Do they keep like relapsing after tons of protocols? So it just takes a lot. It's a lot of the same stuff I was doing, but it's like thinking more moves ahead in the chess game. The chess game is getting more advanced. I'm able to kind of see more possible outcomes when I'm looking at the board, right? And that's something that I really teach in the mentorship too, is challenging that thought. It's like, how many moves ahead do you think you can get? If you can get 3 to 5 moves ahead, you'll probably be successful. If you can get 10 moves ahead, you're really going to kill it. And you get clients to ask like, well, do you think we should get labs? We haven't got labs in 4 months. I'm like, nope, because you can't handle the data right now, and we're making progress. Absolutely not, because everything is improving. So we should actually just not do that. Because if we pull those labs and you see like 1 or 2 markers that are flagged, it just goes back to the gutter. So how about we don't do that right now? So it's just like, there's just so many more considerations to make now, man.
Yeah, 100%. That's something that I picked up from you when we worked together, even like indirectly when you coached me for a period of time as well, like just the way that you handled things. I was kind of just like observing, that's how I learn really well. I observe, and like I said, paradigm shifts are really helpful for me in terms of shifting how I understand and just see things. I'm big on like concepts rather than like specifics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Same.
But yeah, like I noticed that you would try to pick up on patterns like earlier on and start like analyzing patterns earlier on as well, or just throughout the whole process to kind of pick up on things and navigate appropriately. And, I've tried to pick up on things on the front end too. And it's funny, like how you talked about, you can kind of tell when somebody's coming in, like, what kind of person they're going to be to an extent. Like, I feel like we're kind of psychoanalytical, which can be really helpful with our career paths. But one thing that I know that you've talked about in the past and I'm big on too is like kind of spotting like neuroticism, because that can be such a detriment when people are so hyper fixated on numbers and data, and like knowing where to pull back. And if I can see that on the front end and like pull back on how much data we're collecting on the front end, that's why I like using like spreadsheets rather than, other platforms you can utilize for programming, because I can pull so much off and just delete it off of the whole program so that they're not even looking at it to begin with, right? And spiraling, because one thing you mentioned when you started talking about different systems was the first thing you mentioned was the mind, right? And I think that people really underestimate how much their mind affects their ability to make progress. And they could be checking all the boxes and doing all the things and tracking all the data all over the place and confused and stressed all the time. Their sympathetic tonality is going to be super high all the time. Their cortisol is going to be elevated, all chronically elevated all the time. And it's really just going to start to deteriorate their progress and their ability to get the most out of what they're doing, right? And there's like a fine line between like how much data we're collecting and how much we're looking at, and to create like less overwhelm, right? And some people can handle like doing that, right? I have athletes that track all the data and are doing all the things have super low stress, and they're good. They're happy. They're sleeping fantastic. And then so you have somebody track their weight more than 3 times a week, and they're spiraling immediately, right?
Yeah.
So what are some things you do to support that or like pull people back? Because it's worse than ever, right? Because people are looking, the people that are neurotic are just like taking in so much
Way more neurotic.
Yeah, it's just driving more neuroticism, right? Or somebody that was maybe like leaning towards neuroticism now is like full-fledged neurotic, right? So what are some things you do other than just like looking at things on the front end, but managing it through the process, like keeping people more grounded or maybe eliminating the amount of information that you're tracking? You already kind of mentioned some of that stuff, but what are some more specifics with that kind of case?
Yeah, I posted the other day that most things we do are an inverted U in terms of response. Like, more is better until it's not. You need a minimum amount of something to get value from it. And that's basically everything we do. Data, how much training volume you do, how much intensity you do, how much, how many PEDs you take, right? Like, eventually the side effects probably start outweighing the return on investment. How much food you can eat in the off season before your digestion starts to go to shit. Like basically everything that we do. Stress even. If you just don't care and you have no sense of urgency, and you will have basically, you be like a blob, and not care about anything and not have want to do anything. So, but obviously too much is going to go the other way. And we have so much access to data and so many things we can track that it becomes more of an issue. I like what you said about using spreadsheets and things, and I do a lot of that too, because I can change what people are looking at or what they have access to. I think that a huge mistake that people make is they think that adding more things to their program adds value. That is absolutely not true. I mean, it could be true potentially, but for a lot of people, especially in this case that we're talking about, it's like more bells and whistles, more variables to track, more steps even to complete. I would argue that there is a point of diminishing return, and it's probably a lot lower than what people realize, right? Of like what people actually need. So when you get to a very mature athlete who has done this a long time, or someone that's been like a hobby, like a hobby builder or a competitor, either way, they don't need as much, because kind of like know what's relevant for that person and what's not. I can use myself as an example. I pretty much know like what data to look at, which that doesn't really serve me anymore, or even which data that drives me nuts a little bit, so I don't utilize it, or at least sparingly. And so I think that the important thing for the coach is just setting it up correctly. Like you said, it's really going to come down to what you give them. I mean, if you tell them to do it and then it backfires, that's kind of on you to some extent. You have to be able to read the room. You have to be able to understand that. And that's why we do an intake. That's why we kind of understand like what they're already looking at. If we don't have any data, then we can scale it up a little bit. If we have if they're coming in and their consultation is like insanely long, and you can pay attention to which sections they give you the most information, clear down to their issue is they don't have a menstrual cycle. You look at their consultation, training, they kind of brush over that. Nutrition, they don't really say a whole lot. They give you the real basic stuff, but maybe this section about their basal body temperature and stuff, like they have like 97 data points and they're like super, super detailed. Okay, cool. Delete. And funny enough, I had a case the other day, exact same thing. As we stopped, she had great lady, great client. She's doing awesome. But she had an app, there's like the Flow app, and there's like all these different apps. And it was like religiously tracking and every trend. And I'm like, you know what? Let's dump that for a while. Bam, symptoms were gone. I'm like, I just fixed it. And of course, not every case is going to be that simple, but it's a step in the right direction, right? It's a step. You're not going to retrain bad habits in your personality and all these things instantaneously, but cumulatively, if you can start realizing things and pulling things back, you'll get there. I don't think that people are like unfixable necessarily, but there has to be a level. They have to be willing to go through a level of discomfort sometimes, because change feels foreign for all of us. In business too, in everything. The uncomfortable stuff you're avoiding is probably the stuff that you need usually.
Yeah, and that's why people fall back into patterns too, right? Because they're just like, they're falling back into what they're used to and what they're accustomed to and what they've always kind of been around. A term that I picked up from you a long time ago was just low-hanging fruit. So it's like focusing on the fun. And I feel this myself sometimes, and I avoid heading in that direction because it's, like you said, that FOMO thing or wanting to grow your business, that kind of stuff, right? If I'm like bringing somebody back down to fundamentals and stripping things down a little bit, it's like, you have that worry of like somebody's going to be like, what am I even paying you for? Like, it's just a meal plan and training. And like, we're not doing all these complex things that I've been hearing about all these other people doing. You kind of have that concern of like somebody maybe being like, what am I even paying you for? This is just the basics. You took stuff off my program, like stuff that I was already doing, And I would say that it's more like somebody that's having more of a shotgun approach, or I look at a program that's like I call it like a Frankenstein, where it's just so much shit on like just put together. I'm like, what the hell even is this? We gotta shape this down and get back to like just focusing on the basics. Because not only is it gonna help us like eliminate the noise and understand what's actually happening, but it's also going to like alleviate things mentally for you and how much you're tracking and how much you're having. One thing that I think that people don't even talk about enough is just the amount of tasks that we're giving people. Like, these people have jobs, careers, they have families. Like, these people have a lot to get done every day already. And we're handing them all these tasks to accomplish and add on top of those tasks. And that's just adding to the stress. And like a lot of coaches seem to be very self-righteous and like, you got to be doing all this stuff because like, it's the client's fault. I'm like, dude, maybe you need to give them less tasks because they're already having to do so much during the day. Like, you're complaining about them not being able to check in and stuff, but you're asking them to do like 50, 60 things every single day for you that don't need to be there necessarily, right?
Yeah, you get, and part of that is because coaches are out of touch with normal 9 to 5 reality. Now, successful coaches, the ones I know, we probably all work too much, be honest with you. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that, right? I always tell people, I'm like, hey, my magnesium and mineral requirements are very high because I'm too stressed, and I'll be completely honest with you. But I'm pretty aware of what's going on, and I support myself where I can. But also, to that same token, I also understand what my training capacity is because of that, right? And I don't go over that. I've trained 4 days a week for years because that's about all I could handle. And I make good progress doing that. And same thing goes for all the other variables, right? It's like you put together the morning routine and the tracking throughout the day and doing all their stuff. And it's like, who's doing this? And when are they doing it? And a lot of these people have kids and stuff. And now having like 2 stepsons and going to events and games and all this stuff, dude, I'm going to tell you that most of these programs are so unrealistic for people. And if they can do them, they're so damn stressed out trying to do it. It's no wonder that they have so many issues. And And I always say that if your bodybuilding should be able to operate, especially if you have a coach, your bodybuilding or fitness goals, if you're not a competitor, should be able to pretty much operate like software in the background. If you have it set up correctly and you're not doing too many things, you should not have to think about it much more than when you're, preparing your meals, and you're probably training around the same times every week anyhow, like similar. You really shouldn't have to put a ton of thought into it outside of that. You should pretty much be able to operate and put your focus on your career, your relationships, hobbies, if that's, I hope people have at least something they enjoy outside of that. If they don't, I made a video about that the other day too, believe it or not. If you don't, you will probably burn out and fail. Mm-hmm. And then you'll hate bodybuilding and think it's like the dumbest thing that ruined your life. And it's like, no, dude, that's not how that works. But I think that's a great point. I see these programs, and also talking to people that I know that aren't my clients, but hearing what their coaches have them do. And again, it's not a knock on anyone. I'm thinking like, dude, I wouldn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. It's not because I'm lazy. It's just because it's like just ridiculous shit that has almost no ROI.
Yeah, exactly. It just creates a convoluted program for somebody to follow. I mean, most coaches probably work from home in some capacity, or maybe they go to like a cafe to work or whatever, but I would argue most coaches are probably working from a desk at home, and like you said, just a little bit out of touch, because like we have access to our kitchen. It's like right over there. Like all these things, all it takes is a little bit of empathy, right? And like empathizing with people. I think I've mentioned this to you before as well. Like my original career path was like in hospitality. I worked at like high-end hotels and stuff. And I think like maybe just like if a bodybuilding coach maybe had a job that wasn't coaching, like at some point or for some extended period of time, maybe it would help in terms of perspective. Maybe go do some volunteer work or something and try to manage your day like the same way that you already do, and see what the challenges look like, so you can have a little bit more empathy for people. Maybe might be a little bit helpful, right? Something along those lines. But yeah, it's just, it's tailoring things to the individual, right? You don't have to just, like I said, shotgun approach for everybody. Some people need a lot less to do. And you mentioned one thing where bodybuilding or just execution of the program should just be kind of just like second nature almost. Like it becomes like integrated into your things that you're already doing somewhat seamlessly. And on the front end, like, because you mentioned, like you said, change can be very uncomfortable. I always tell people to like at least let's give it a little bit of time, right? Like it may be challenging right now because you're trying to do all these different things, but let's try to like kind of transition into this point where things can be second nature. Like everything's just kind of a part of your daily routine and something that's sustainable. And I always tell my clients, I'm like, if it's not sustainable, it's not worth doing, because no change, we're not going to be able to create any progress long term if it's not sustainable. I don't want to be the coach that you come to and things aren't sustainable and you're going and trying to find something else. So it's like a work in progress. You try to find that happy medium on the front end. It's like, we're going to have some discomfort on the front end. It may be a little bit challenging to integrate these things, but we want to get to a point relatively quickly that we can be kind of smooth sailing from there, right? And then fine tuning things, pulling back, maybe adding a little bit more if they can handle a little bit more, whatever that looks like. But that's what, at the end of the day, that's what like good coaching is going to look like, right? It's not just like, hey, just do what I say, or like, oh, it's your fault because you can't do all these things that I'm telling you to do. I think that we need to have a discussion of like some level of balance here, right? And like I get annoyed when people really are like balance, like just toss the word balance out the window, or just like put a really strong negative connotation on balance, because I'm like, the balance I'm talking about is not the balance that like maybe you might be hearing, or the balance that you have a preconceived notion about. I'm talking about finding like a balance within something where we can create like balance within an extreme too. Like if somebody's a bodybuilder, right? We're trying to find like we're doing something extreme, but we're trying to find balances within that extreme so that we don't just like crash and burn. It's not, I don't think it's rocket science to grasp that concept. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's true. And it's like when you take things away, you programming, for example, and somebody's very apprehensive to do it, and I'm thinking, well, what you're doing is not working, so I'm not really sure what you are scared of. I would say you just like doing the same thing and expecting a different result type of thing, right? I would also say that it would be a very bad business model for us to intentionally do things that are going to get worse results. That would probably not make a whole lot of sense. Like, but it all comes back down to trust again. And that's it can be a little tricky, because I think in an ideal world, people already trust you when they start with you. They've kind of vetted that out. They maybe been referred to you by somebody. They probably talked to that person. And if you have a lot of issues with that personally, like if you're getting clients and you have a lot of those issues, more so than occasionally, you probably have one of two problems. You are not getting a lot of your clients from referral. You're getting a lot of them starting with a very cold lead on social media, and that lead is warming up very quickly, which means that you're good at marketing, but you're not forming any trust, because that doesn't happen that fast. You get them to trust you enough that they want what you have, but they don't really trust you. I posted something the other day about, I keep referencing these things, but it's it's stuff I think about a lot, and how it takes like a year or more for someone to come to actually talk to me after they see me on social media. I've just kind of paid attention to that. I just hey, I've been following you for 2 years. Hey, I've been following you for a year. Or I'll just ask people, and it seems like the average is probably close to a year. Man, that's really long. But after a year of following someone, you're pretty damn bought in. You have really thought about your decision at that point. And referrals are usually a little bit easier in the sense that they've probably already vetted that out with their friend or acquaintance or spouse or whatever. So yeah, man, I think that's the biggest thing. And that's also where the sensationalistic marketing creates a higher churn rate, because A, a lot of these people don't have the skills, and B, they don't really have the trust either. All they're doing is getting some kind of huge appeal to emotion, and they're getting people to bite on that. That client's not going to last.
Yeah, 100%, man. And trust is so important, and building that trust, referrals are the best. And I picked that up from you as well. I've had so much focus on my business to just create referrals, and not necessarily in a way where I'm directly doing that, but just doing, I strive to handle each person in a way that they're going to go tell somebody else and want to get them on board. Right. So that's how I approach my business. And it's been really helpful, because I would say that the vast majority of my leads over the years have been referrals. And I always say that's a good indication that you're at least doing a decent job, right?
I would say so. Yeah.
100%. And the less you have to market and spend money on marketing too, right?
Yeah, especially if you've been around for more than 2 or 3 years, you should be leaning towards more referral, I think. If you've had some social proof and you've actually helped some people, if no one's telling anyone, it's probably not good.
Yeah, for real.
If you're doing a really good job, you'll probably get referrals from people that aren't even your clients.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, we'll go and wrap things up, man. I really appreciate your time today. It would be awesome if I could get you on again at some point so we can talk a little bit more shit about what's going on with the industry, and maybe dig into some functional health topics. But I really appreciate you coming on, man. Please tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you go to my Instagram, Austin ST8 on Instagram, just go to my bio. You'll find all the resources in there. So if you want to inquire about mentorship or any services, there's an inquiry link. If you are interested in my other social medias, anything like that, all that stuff's going to be in the link tree. So that's the easiest place to check. And of course, feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you again, not only for coming on today, but also for just everything that you've done for me as far as my career goes.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I've really enjoyed the chat, so I look forward to this one dropping.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for joining us. Your journey towards excellence does not end here. We're here to help guide you every step of the way. For more insights and to become a part of our community, follow and subscribe. Your feedback illuminates our path. Be sure to share your thoughts and stay tuned for more episodes.